Eastern Europe lives with a giant on its doorstep. It's a reality etched deep in the region's psyche, a fear passed down through generations. This isn't simply about proximity, it's about a history scarred by invasion, occupation, and the suppression of identity. From the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, the fear of Russia isn't theoretical, it's visceral, rooted in lived experiences that continue to shape the present. For many in the West, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of an era. The Cold War was over, but for countries like Poland, the Baltic states, or Romania, the shadow of Russian power never truly receded. They remember the tanks, the secret police, the brutal silencing of dissent. They carry the memories of those who fought for freedom and those who perished under oppressive regimes. In the following minutes, we will delve into the historical reasons behind Eastern Europe's deep-seated resentment and fear of Russia. We'll journey from the expansionist ambitions of the Tsarist Empire to the horrors of the Soviet era. We'll examine how the wounds of the past continue to bleed into the present, fueling distrust and shaping geopolitical realities. This is a story of survival, resilience, and the constant struggle to secure a future free from fear. It's a story that needs to be understood not only for the sake of the past, but for the precarious present we all inhabit. And it is also a story that needs to be told so that the future generations will not forget the hardships their predecessors endured at the hand of the Russians, and allow themselves to be deceived by Russian proxies and propaganda. The roots of fear run deep, stretching back centuries to the rise of the Russian Empire. In the 18th century, a newly powerful Russia, under ambitious rulers like Catherine the Great, embarked on a campaign of westward expansion. This drive for territory and influence put them on a collision course with their western neighbors. One of the most devastating consequences was the partitions of Poland. In 3 stages, 1772, 1793 and 1795, Russia, Austria and Prussia carved up the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Poland, once a vibrant nation, was wiped off the map, its lands divided among its more powerful neighbors. This act of aggression left an enduring scar on the Polish psyche, a constant reminder of Russian ambition and the fragility of sovereignty. Further north, Finland faced a similar fate. Annexed by Russia in the early 19th century, it endured decades of Russification policies aimed at suppressing Finnish culture and language. These historical events, etched in the collective memory of these nations, laid the groundwork for the fear and distrust that would define future relations with Russia. The message was clear. Russia was a powerful and expansionist force, capable of swallowing up entire nations and erasing their identities. This legacy of conquest and domination would cast a long shadow over Eastern Europe, setting the stage for the even darker chapters to come. World War II brought devastation to Europe, but for many Eastern European nations, it ushered in a new era of oppression. With the defeat of Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, under Stalin's iron rule, swept across Eastern Europe, installing communist regimes and consolidating its control. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, were forcibly annexed into the Soviet Union, their independence brutally extinguished. Poland, though spared direct annexation, became a Soviet satellite state. Its fate dictated from Moscow. Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary all fell under the sway of Soviet influence, their destinies bound to the Kremlin. This wasn't just a political takeover, it was a systematic campaign of repression and terror. The Katyn massacre, a chilling example of Soviet brutality, saw the execution of over 20,000 Polish officers and intellectuals by the Soviet secret police. In Romania, mass deportations to Siberian labor camps decimated communities, tearing families apart and silencing opposition. The Sovietization of these nations was swift and brutal, leaving behind a legacy of trauma and distrust that continues to haunt the region. The Iron Curtain descended, dividing Europe in two. For those in the West, life went on with its freedoms and opportunities. But for millions trapped behind the Iron Curtain, daily life was a starkly different reality. The Soviet system was built on control and repression. Freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly, all were ruthlessly suppressed. The secret police, omnipresent and feared, instilled a climate of paranoia and suspicion, turning neighbor against neighbor. Any hint of dissent, any whisper of opposition was met with swift and brutal retribution. The Hungarian Revolution of 1956, a desperate bid for freedom, was crushed by Soviet tanks. The Prague Spring of 1968, a brief moment of liberalization in Czechoslovakia, was similarly extinguished. These events sent a chilling message. Any attempt to challenge Soviet authority would be met with overwhelming force. For those who lived through these dark times, the memories remain vivid: the constant fear, the lack of basic freedoms, the crushing weight of an oppressive regime. It's a past that continues to shape their worldview, fueling their deep-seated distrust of Russia and its intentions. The year 1989 brought a wave of euphoria across Eastern Europe. The Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall fell, communism crumbled, and the Soviet Union itself dissolved in 1991. For a brief moment, there was hope that a new era of peace and cooperation had dawned. However, the transition was far from smooth. Many Eastern European nations struggled to shed the legacy of Soviet rule, grappling with economic challenges and the need to build democratic institutions from scratch. Meanwhile, Russia, under the leadership of Boris Yeltsin and later Vladimir Putin, grappled with its own internal challenges and the loss of its superpower status. But old habits die hard. As Russia regained its footing, it began to reassert its influence in its near abroad, the former Soviet republics and satellite states. The language of brotherhood and cooperation gave way to a more assertive, even aggressive posture. The West, focused on integrating Eastern Europe into NATO and the European Union, largely failed to grasp the depth of Russian resentment and its determination to reassert its dominance. This miscalculation would have profound consequences in the years to come. The year 2008 shattered any remaining illusions about a post-Cold War peace. Russia's invasion of Georgia, a small nation on its southern border, sent shockwaves across Eastern Europe. Here was a clear demonstration that Russia was willing to use military force to achieve its geopolitical objectives. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 confirmed these fears. Using a carefully orchestrated campaign of disinformation and military pressure, Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, a move widely condemned by the international community. This act of aggression was a turning point. It shattered the post-Cold War order and sent a chilling message to Eastern Europe. Russia was back, and it was willing to redraw borders by force. The ongoing war in Ukraine, a brutal conflict fueled by Russian aggression, only serves to deepen the sense of fear and insecurity in the region. For Eastern Europeans, these events are not abstract geopolitical disputes. They are a stark reminder of their own vulnerability, a terrifying echo of their own history. The battle for hearts and minds is just as crucial as the one fought on the battlefield. Russia, under Putin's leadership, has honed the use of disinformation as a weapon, skillfully exploiting the openness of democratic societies to sow discord and undermine trust. State-sponsored media outlets, often disguised as independent news sources, pump out a steady stream of propaganda, distorting facts, spreading conspiracy theories, and painting Russia as the victim of Western aggression. Social media platforms, with their vast reach and algorithms that prioritize engagement over accuracy, have become fertile ground for spreading these narratives. This information war seeks to undermine Western unity, sow doubt about NATO, and erode support for Ukraine. It aims to create confusion, to muddy the waters, and to make it harder for people to distinguish truth from fiction. For Eastern European nations, long targeted by Russian disinformation campaigns, this poses a serious threat. Many understand the power of propaganda, having lived through decades of Soviet-era disinformation, but many also are prone to fall victims to this propaganda due to the misinformation spread by online, unreliable sources. The fear of Russia is palpable, but so too is the determination to resist. Eastern European nations understand that freedom is not free. It comes at a cost, requiring vigilance, sacrifice, and a willingness to stand up to aggression. NATO membership, once a distant dream, is now a cornerstone of their security. Military spending has increased, with countries like Poland and the Baltic states bolstering their defenses and deepening their partnerships with Western allies. But the threat extends beyond tanks and troops. Cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and political interference, these are all tools in Russia's hybrid warfare playbook. Eastern European nations are on the front lines of this struggle, working to counter these threats and protect their democratic institutions. It's a delicate balancing act. They must deter Russian aggression without provoking an escalation. They must defend their sovereignty while remaining open to dialogue and cooperation. The fear of Russia is deeply ingrained in Eastern Europe's DNA. It's a fear rooted in history, fueled by recent events and amplified by the ever-present threat of renewed aggression. The future remains uncertain. The outcome of the war in Ukraine will have profound consequences for the region and the world. But one thing is clear: Eastern Europe will never again take its freedom for granted. They will continue to build their defenses, strengthen their alliances, and fight for their right to determine their own destiny. They will do so knowing that their struggle is not just about geography or politics. It's about preserving their identity, their values, and their hard-won freedom. The world must stand with them.